Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about Seti in Total War Pharaoh, the heir to the throne of Egypt, though he is going to have to fight for the throne of Egypt if he is going to get it. He starts just south of Memphis, of Meneptah, and he is in a prime position to actually dominate all of Egypt. Like, Ramesses has the issue where he wants to go west for sacred lands, but he really wants to conquer the east, whereas Seti has a much better campaign situation because the lands he's conquering are sacred lands, and they're also going to give him all of the resources that he needs. Like his starting enemy, for instance, like he starts with 2 settlements, he can gain a third very quickly in his campaign. We just out-resolve that, then go fight the battle for the settlement over here on turn 1 if you want to risk it, or if you don't want to risk it, you can wait until turn 2, just recruit some more units. You do start with the ability of recruiting 3 units per turn, so keep in mind that that is a particular advantage that he does have. So one of the main benefits that he has in his campaign is the geographic position. It's a fairly safe position, because the factions to the east, because you've got Ramesses to the east, and Ramesses, while he's not necessarily your best friend, he certainly doesn't dislike you. You can make a pretty good, you can have a pretty good situation with Ramesses. You also start allied with Tosret, so you can gain some resources from her by joining her initial war. So there's a lot of potential, diplomatically speaking, geographically speaking, in Seti's campaign. You start with stone, you start with food, you start with food in your capital, you have a stone settlement, you get a bronze settlement, you would then have a gold settlement, and then if you go march on this particular province to take it over, there's more bronze, more food. Bronze is one of the most important resources to get, because bronze and food are 2 of the most important resources. So you get stone, bronze, gold, food very early on. You're going to struggle a bit with wood, because there's not really a whole lot of wood settlements over here in this area, but there are some of the most important resources. And you can trade those away, especially gold, for wood from other factions. Besides, Egypt doesn't necessarily need a huge amount of wood to get going. So that is one of the bigger benefits that Seti does have in his campaign. My recommendation from a geographical position, like, just conquer this territory, then start moving south, conquering everything along the way, or maybe vassalizing some factions. Like, if you want to pick a fight with Wazet, that's your choice. There's pros and cons with picking a fight with Wazet. Personally, I would probably go in Saw and take Saw out, take this province, and then take Nupt, and then just go, well, pretty far south, really. Because as you're expanding here, these AI factions are going to recolonize these settlements. And even if they do, you can take them over for yourself. And this, while this won't maximize your legitimacy, there are still plenty of settlements along the way that will increase your legitimacy. So that is fairly solid. That is a very solid situation that you can have when it comes to resources, when it comes to legitimacy. Now, other things to keep in mind with regards to Seti. He does worship Set, which makes sense. Now, if we're looking at Set, now Set gives you ammunition on recruitment, workforce growth, and if you go to pray to a shrine, you're going to get R size and speed for the missile infantry in the army. So you can really make that work decently well. Now, his command, his active command, can allow you to recruit units twice as fast in a single turn, but units will start out with lower HP. But he is probably the only legendary lord in the game that can recruit a lot of units, even on default settings. Obviously, you can increase recruitment slots with campaign customization, but Seti can just recruit a lot of units very quickly by default. Then another benefit, but the passive benefit to Shamsu Hor is probably worth looking at more, because all your armies will receive better rewards from battle until the next Shamsu Hor, so more post-battle loot, to keep that in consideration. Now, in the court, you can use requests as zero guard with other positions. This means that you have access to all requests from the very start, the moment you get access to the court. Your guard can drop below 0. Using assist after rewards will be costlier. If you amass required gold, assist will provide you with enough regard for 2 requests instead of 1. So just keep in mind that while you do have access to requests, so you get access to the core powers easier, you do have a bit of a downside with respect to that. When we're looking at his titles for Seti, looking at his titles, he does get the Claw of Bastet, which grants attribute Armor Breaker for tier 1 and tier 2 units. But quite crucially, if you get 3 points over here in Fortitude, you can get 5% replenishment very early on. And this applies to all your generals. It isn't just an exclusive situation for Seti. Also, because of his campaign situation, he can take Wazet fairly quickly in a campaign. And the reason Wazet matters is because there is a Pharaoh crown over there that he can make use of. So Seti has a significant number of advantages. While he doesn't have the best economy, someone like Amon Mes or Tasrit can have a better economy, he does have a great geographic position, and he does have some useful effects. What's the downside? His army. So if we're looking at his faction units, right? If we're looking at the faction units as they're described, it says that they're aggressive melee, great at flanking, weak at defending. Now, what kind of units are we talking about? So, in terms of native units, he starts with lower Egyptian units. He starts with the tier 2 barracks. I'd probably recommend trying to get this to tier 3 as quickly as possible. You can do so actually on turn 1. All you need to do is take over the settlement on turn 1 and you can start constructing this. And this will give you access to Lower Egyptian veteran spearmen, veteran swordsmen, armored Lower Egyptian archers, if you're capable of winning that battle. That would probably be my recommendation. Getting access to these tier 3 units would give you a significant amount of battle prowess, because otherwise you're just going to have Lower Egyptian axemen, swordsmen, archers, and then also you get Lower Egyptian militia, which they're just not great units. So it's really the unit situation that hurts Seti. Lower Egypt is not that great. Like the tier 3 units, they're decent enough, but the chariots at tier 4, not worth using. In terms of his unique units, he gets them from infantry housing. Now, I would say that all the tier 2 units are just flat out not worth using, honestly. Because, like, they don't have the combat capability. Yes, you can get Levy, Clubman, Swordsman, all that. But I would probably recommend just getting the tier 3 building reasonably quick and getting Veteran Levy Axemen once you've recruited a decent amount of Lower Egyptian veteran spearmen and swordsmen. And then you can maximize your combat ability with Levy Axemen. While they won't have the best armor piercing, keep in mind you're not going to be dealing with units with a high level of armor, because you're going to be dealing with lower Egypt units, and you're going to deal with upper Egyptian units. They are not going to have the best level of armor, so relying on clubmen is not necessarily important in Seti's campaign. But certainly the army is not really the best army that you can get. You can get veteran Levy fighters that are axemen, but at tier 5 you get access to elite clubmen, which have a decent level of armor. They're reasonably fast, but they are heelless chargers, so they can charge at an enemy even when you haven't given an order to do so. So he's got a decent amount of combat strength, but it's just not really the best combat strength you can get in the game. And by the way, I'd probably recommend fighting these battles manually to maximize to be able to really, like, if you winning this battle right here on turn 1 is certainly a fairly tall order, though you can use the Royal Kapeshi Guards, you can make use of the Lower Egyptian militia in order to win the battle over there. The problems you're going to have are lack of wood, lack of a great army. You're going to rely quite heavily, I would argue, on native units. In particular, upper Egyptian units, once you get access to them, can be fairly good. I'd recommend expanding across this entire area down the Nile. You might even go up to beat Amon Mes over here. Though you don't necessarily need to fight Amon Mess, so just bear in mind. Keep in mind, I did reveal the entire campaign situation over here. One of the things I would recommend you avoid doing is going to the desert, because that's where the Libyans are going to spawn. When the Civil War kicks off, you should be careful about getting entangled in the Civil War. Because your father, he has 3 vassals, so you're looking at dealing with 4 factions. Okay, he only has an army of 10 units, but he will use that army, and it's an elite army. But these vassals, they will get full-on proper armies to use against you. So you've got their capitals all across the Nile, and their secondary settlements in the desert. Now, if you could take all of this territory, that would give you a great deal of strength, but just keep in mind that you're going to have to deal with all of these guys. My recommendation, march to the south, secure a good amount of land, and then march your armies, multiple armies, to take all of this territory. Try and take the capital before Ramesses, because Ramesses will make a bid for the throne, and he might beat you to it, because Ramesses can certainly take all of this territory. Like, under AI control, Ramesses does significantly better than he does under AI control. So just a few things to keep in mind over there. And let me just show you how all of this would actually look like, because I have played a campaign as Seti. So if I load this up, okay, so this is
soon they will start.
Turn 24 of the campaign. So what I did is, well, I vassalized Wazet. That wasn't necessarily the best decision, but the Civil War had kicked off and I just want to go here. This is a customized campaign, but the principles of the campaign are the same. So I marched my armies over here, took a good amount of territory, and then once the Civil War kicked off, I joined it, and now I've taken this particular province. I've wiped out one of the vassals. I've taken the capital. I used, like, if you want to make your life a bit easier with respect to taking some of these cities, because they are higher tier cities, you can certainly take, you can certainly use Thutmose the Conqueror to make your life a bit easier with respect to that, if you want to. Though I would say that the benefits you get from that are absolutely very, very, very situational. As benefits in a campaign. I mean, I could certainly take out Wazet if I wanted to over here. I could have done so earlier. But, like, here's the thing about Thutmose the Conqueror. I was just trying to figure out. It's not a great benefit because the campaign, like, it takes a while to build up this kind of level of support. And by the time you've built it up, you're probably going to take these cities for yourself. Besides, it only works for the sacred city, so the benefits are just not worth it in this one. I'd say caravans are better, or all the others, including at 10. One thing to mention is, like, a 10 would probably be a really good choice for Seti, because he is fairly close to the city that you can get over there, and you can get sacred land, and you can get civilization to keep civilization intact. And the armies that you're going to be using, well, with Seti I recruited a bunch of Lower Egyptian conscripts, militia, armored Lower Egyptian archers, and just regular archers. But the secondary armies, like the armies you'd probably want to build up, are Lower Egyptian veteran spearmen, veteran Levy axemen, armored Lower Egyptian archers, and veteran swordsmen. That's the kind of army you'd be looking at to get in a campaign. And this army is in a similar boat. Though one of the things to mention with the court, you can certainly benefit from going to Amon Mess and making a request for Kushite mercenaries. So that's one of the things I actually took advantage of over here to get a bunch of Kushite spearmen and archers. Like, it gives you 2 Kushite spearmen and 2 Kushite archers. You can, of course, go to the court and go to the first commander and request elite warriors. But you can see here that the regard that I have with these guys has gone down quite a bit, because I have been using those court actions to get the benefits from them the moment I got access to the court. So it gave me a good amount of power. I have been able to accomplish quite a bit in this campaign, took a significant amount of territory, and safe territory. Like, there's only a minor factions over here in Sinai, but they're gonna fight each other, or they're gonna fight Ramesses, or they're just gonna be passive, like the Ketch, for instance, are not really hostile towards you. And besides, the Ketch do start a war with these guys right here, so they're gonna end up being limited in the early game. In the long term, well, take as many sacred lands as possible and win the campaign. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.